All right. Hi everyone. So welcome back. So just as a reminder, we left off with this alcohol data example, and so you were supposed to kind of finish that on your own and kind of answer the various questions that are scattered around that. There was also some athlete data on the top 100 highest paid athletes, and so you were supposed to kind of mess around with that data too and answer some questions about that as well. And so if we're kind of navigating using this little sidebar thing, we are now on finishing up. And so the last major topic that we'll talk about for this kind of week zero intro is different types of common errors that you'll get. And we'll just go through them by example. And so this first example, if you kind of run this line with Command Enter, what happens is a graph doesn't appear, and you'll see in your bottom left that this caret sign is now changed to a plus sign to indicate the start of the line. That is almost always bad. So you usually want to see like a caret before you run a line of code in that bottom left-hand window. And so usually that happens either because you missed a closed quotes or you missed a closed parentheses. And so RStudio is kind of helpful in that it'll kind of try to let you know, like if you see on my screen, if I put the cursor here next to this parentheses, it highlights the open parentheses that this one closes. And so therefore we kind of know that this parentheses never closes, and so we need to add a parenthesis to go ahead and close it. Because we're on this weird plus thing now though, even after you do that and you run a line, nothing happens because this plus thing is still there. And there are a few ways to kind of escape that. I think the easiest is just to press the escape key. So if you put your cursor down here and then press escape, then it should bring you back to this caret, and now you should be able to rerun this line. Which brings up another error. If it says kind of this object athletes isn't found, that means that you never read in the athletes data set. And so for this particular R session, I never read in the athletes data set because I didn't make a video about it. And so something that's super, 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 super helpful that you can do is click this little down arrow thing. And if you hover over it, it says run all chunks above. If you click that, it will run all the code in every single R chunk that's above this particular chunk. And so that means that it ran the code chunk that read in that athlete's data set. And so now when I run this line, I'll actually get the plot in the bottom right, which is nice. All right. And so some other common errors, I'm not going to spend nearly as much time on these because you'll just kind of encounter them and figure it out as you go along. But forgetting a comma, it just gives you this super cryptic thing that's not super helpful for pretty much anything, but the error actually comes in the line above. And that is somewhat helpful because it just says there's an unexpected symbol, meaning that you forgot a symbol somewhere, and so I forgot the comma here, and that kind of fixes the error. So we mentioned before, R is case sensitive, meaning that stuff has to be capitalized correctly. And so running this won't work because it says object sport is not found. If you look at the athletes data set, you'll see that sport is actually capitalized. And so we have to capitalize it before we run that chunk to filter to just get the tennis players. It works inside the parentheses as well. Like if we didn't capitalize tennis, then it gives us nothing because there aren't any sports that are called tennis with a lowercase. So semi-annoying, but you'll kind of get used to it as we go along. And then the last kind of error that we're going to briefly talk about is forgetting quotes. And so if you're kind of labeling axes, that's a place where you'll need quotes. We'll talk more about when quotes are needed and when they're not when we actually talk about ggplot, so don't worry about that too much for now. But if you enter in something without the quotes, it'll again give you this unexpected symbol. And so that means you forgot a comma or you forgot quote somewhere, something went awry. Oh wait, no. Oh, phew, okay. I did not want to make, would have been 5.5 minutes of wasted video. That would have been so sad. So that's about it for this kind of getting started. We haven't talked about comments, but you could enter in code comments with this hashtag symbol. And I always use double hashtags. I don't know why, but they don't have to be. So comment, blah, blah, blah. This is just nice because this means that you could write anything. And since it's a comment, it doesn't have to run, which is good. All right. So once you're kind of done, you could save with Command S or Control S, and then make sure that when you click knit, the file will actually knit. And so ideally we should be kind of knitting throughout our document, especially as we get started, because it'll help you catch errors sooner. And so now we have this kind of nice HTML file that we could scroll through with this table of contents on the side. And so if you were to reference this document in the future, now I think is when you would reference this HTML file. And so it's nice to be working through the .rmd file, the markdown. But for the future, if you were trying to remember something that was in this particular document, I think it's easier to navigate this HTML file from if you're kind of looking back and want to know, like, how did we, I don't know, how did we rank the different countries according to how much beer they consumed? And then you could kind of scroll through this and kind of easily find the ranking. Okay, so there will be one last video on how to export this and upload it to Sakai for submission, which you should do before our first in-person class on Monday.